welcome back to the Law and Crime Child Network. I'm Stacey Delicat, and we are doing the Law and Crime Rewind. The theme today, The Victim Speaks. We are revisiting some of the top trials of the past year where the victims of the crime testified. So we are going to start with Kody Lott, Texas versus Kody Lott. He was accused of killing two young girls, Lauren Landavazo, 13, shooting two young girls, 13, Lauren Landavazo and Michaela Smith. Michaela Smith survived. She tells her story to jurors, the harrowing moments. The two girls were walking home from school when Kody Lott opened fire. And then this afternoon we'll be continuing on with the Sean Great trial. You may recall that was a particularly horrific story. Sean Great holding a woman captive in his home, abusing her. She managed to call police while Great was sleeping next to her, and they arrived at the home not just to find her, but two other dead bodies. That'll be coming up later this afternoon. But now let's get to Texas versus Kody Lott. Again, these two 13-year-old girls, they were walking home from middle school on September 2nd, 2016, when Lott approached them and opened fire. Michaela Smith was injured, but she did live to tell the story of what happened to her and her friend, Lauren. Let's begin with the prosecutor's opening arguments.
Not guilty. All right, you may be seated. Does the state care to make an opening statement?
I do, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Okay, please, the court, counsel, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. As criminal district attorney, I represent the citizens of Wichita County. And in Wichita County is the city of Wichita Falls, and the population is about 100,000. And this is the city in which these crimes occurred. And what opening statement my job is to tell you what I believe the evidence will show throughout the course of the trial. And this case is about sweet, vibrant, joyful Lauren Landavazo. She was 13 years old. She's the daughter of Vern and Bianca Landavazo. And when the SUV turned, Garrett was just coming up on the sidewalk and looked to his left, and he saw the Tahoe stop at the entrance of that alleyway. He heard shots fired. He saw Lauren Landavazo fall. So what did he do? He started running. He ran. That's all he knew to do. You'll hear from a now 15-year-old Michaela Smith, and she'll tell you her friends were Lauren and Kyra, and they walked home from school just like any other day on that September 2nd of 2016. And then a white, shaggy-headed guy pulls up in a vehicle and shoots her in the chest, and then proceeds to shoot her good friend, Lauren Landavazo, and kills her. So she runs, and as she's running down that alley, she turns and looks, and she sees her friend Lauren down on the ground. She looks down and she sees blood coming from her shirt and her chest area and realizes that she's been shot. She can't breathe. She looks back at Lauren and all she sees is her feet aren't moving. That's what stands out in her mind. And as people arrive, and the last thing she remembers of Lauren is looking at her.
So the prosecutor there recounting this story about this 13-year-old girl, Lauren Landavazo, who was walking home with her friend, Michaela Smith, who was also 13. The girls, middle school students in Wichita Falls, Kansas. When this vehicle pulls up, Kody Lott gets out and begins shooting. You can just imagine 13-year-old girls taking the path they always take home from school, and then all of a sudden someone pulling up with a gun. Well, Michaela Smith did survive, and as we just heard the prosecutor say, she will testify and share her side of the story, the fear and horror that she experienced after she herself was shot and after she saw her friend, just her legs, the bloody legs, lying on the ground. Well, defense attorneys will say that Kody Lott was insane. They plan to pursue an insanity defense. He had apparently told investigators that he had discussed this plan to kill with the devil. Brian Buckmire, New York City public defender, is still here with me. Based on this opening argument, I mean, you know it's going to be an emotional case, and you know this is a case that dug up a lot of public sympathy, emotion, outcry, and rage. What are sort of your predictions for how this will play out based on the prosecutor's opening statement?
I think you're going to have a lot of young witnesses coming forward and giving very detailed and heart-wrenching descriptions of what occurred in that scene. The prosecutor, even in her opening statement, is telling the story, and I think it was most powerful when she's telling the story through the young girl, Miss Smith. What she saw, she's running away, the pool of blood. It's something that we would hope that no 13-year-old would ever have to live through. And when we're going to hear it from that 13-year-old, I think that the jury is going to be greatly swayed.
Yeah, I mean, you have middle school students here. These are really young students. Obviously, any life is a valuable life. Any life is precious. But, you know, what are your thoughts? You know, being a defense attorney, is there sort of greater impact when it's a young person, when it's a child whose life is lost and cut short? I mean, in this case, you know, totally random crime.
I think the legal part of us as defense attorneys might want to say no, that a life lost under the law is a life lost, but we're all humans. And even much of our laws differentiate between committing crimes against someone under a certain age or even over a certain age. And there's a sense of innocence that when a 13-year-old dies, I don't think there's any way that someone can say, well, maybe there's a reason that she died, or like it's not there. And to explore that as a defense attorney, I think harms your client in the eyes of the jury.
Yeah, for sure. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we are going to kick off the witness testimony, the surviving victim testimony in this Kody Lott trial. Stick around. Welcome back to the Law and Crime Rewind. We are going back to Texas, Wichita Falls, Texas, where this fall Kody Lott was tried for the murder of 13-year-old Lauren Landavazo and aggravated assault of her friend, 13-year-old Michaela Smith. These two girls, middle school students, were walking home from school in September of 2014 when Lott drove up, got out of his truck, and began shooting at them. Michaela survived. She was shot but survived, but her friend Lauren Landavazo was killed. There were also several other young people around who witnessed this murder, and so we will be hearing from the victim, Michaela Smith, as well as these other witnesses. So let's go ahead and kick off this testimony with Garrett Farmer right now.
I'll turn on to Trinidad. Did it go past the alleyway or did it stop?
It stopped and then it was done and went straight. Okay, I don't remember.
Okay. And so when it stopped, did it come to a complete stop?
Complete stop, yes.
Okay, and in the roadway, was it closest to the alley or was it on the other side in its lane of traffic?
Other side of its lane of traffic.
Okay, so it's in its lane of traffic.
Yes.
Okay, when it stopped, were the windows up or down?
I think down.
Okay, and then did you see anything unusual come out of that window that was down on the driver's side door?
It was a gun.
Okay, and so it was a gun. Do you know if it was a handgun or a rifle?
It was a handgun.
Okay.
I don't remember. I saw my video.
Okay, it's okay. It's just what your memory is. Okay, so you see a weapon come out of that window?
Yes, ma'am.
And it's all right. We'll take as long as we need to take, okay?
Okay.
There's no wrong answers. So you see a weapon come out of that window.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you see any hands?
I saw one hand.
Okay, and what was can you tell us what color the hand
It
was?
was a white hand.
Okay, and then after the car stops, the firearm, you see it out the window. What happens next?
I don't remember.
All right. Do you remember hearing anything?
I had 4, 5, 6 or 7 gunshots.
Okay. And your dad's a police officer, so has he taken you shooting, or have you been around hearing gunshots?
I've been around. I've been around some gunshots.
Okay. And then after you heard the gunshots, what did you see?
I just started running, and that's at the point I don't remember.
Okay. Did you see what happened to Lauren?
She fell down on the ground.
Okay. And when she fell down, is it like you lightly fall, or how did she fall? How would you describe it?
She just fell. I don't know how, but she just fell.
Okay. And what were you thinking at that point, Garrett?
All right, that was Garrett Farmer, a former fellow middle schooler, rather, of Lauren Landavazo, who just said he saw her fall to the ground after Kody Lott opened fire. Let's go now to Elijah Aguan, who also saw Lauren as she was hit.
After you saw Lauren falling, what do you remember next?
All I remember is going into Hope's backyard and just waiting until we heard the sound stop. And even after it did, we still waited like a couple seconds.
Do you remember if anybody tried to get into Hope's house back door?
No, I don't think so.
So if one of the girls says she tried, you're not disagreeing with that, are you?
No.
And after the shots stopped, or those sounds stopped, what did you do?
Well, we went back outside into the alley to see what had happened.
Mm-hmm.
And
What did you see?
we saw Lauren on the ground where she had fallen. And we also saw Michaela. She looked like she was out with her phone trying to dial a number.
Was Lauren moving?
No.
Did you talk to Michaela at any time that day?
Mm-hmm.
And did you notice anything unusual?
No.
Did you see whether she'd been shot or not?
Well, she was on the ground and we were, sorry.
It's okay, you're doing great. Really
Well,
are.
we were just talking to, like, we were asking what was going on. And we asked if it was like a real gun or what.
And what'd she say?
She said yes, because she was on the trying to get, she was holding her hand over where she had been shot. And so at that point, then I kind of got over the shock of it and was more frightened at that point. And so I pulled out my phone and I called my dad.
And
There were multiple students walking home from school when this tragic shooting happened. Let's go now to Crystal McCoy, who also witnessed the shooting. She saw Michaela Smith on her hands and knees crawling towards her. Let's hear what she had to say.
did you see Lauren fall?
Yes, ma'am.
And when she fell, did you see her moving after that point?
No, ma'am.
And what did you do when you saw Michaela running back towards you and Lauren fall?
Michaela ended up on her hands and knees down towards us. So we walked towards Michaela to see if she was okay. And then we saw blood, and then I'm pretty sure she called someone. And then I told Hope, wait.
It's okay. It's all right. It's all right. What we'll do is you tell me what you remember, and then we'll slow down and we'll back up. You're doing great.
Okay.
All right. This is hard. It's been 2 years.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So you saw Michaela on her hands and knees, and you walked over towards Michaela, and you saw blood.
Yes.
Okay. And what did you do next?
I looked back towards the other side of the alley, towards the apartments, and I thought I saw that car, but I wasn't sure. So I told Hope to get in her backyard, and I ran past everything to the front of Hope's house to go get her mom to unlock the back door.
And so let me backtrack here. When you heard the shots and you saw Michaela running back towards you all, and Michaela had fallen at that point, where did you, Hope, Elijah, and Ashton go?
Wait, can you rephrase that?
Oh, sure. After you heard the shots and saw Lauren fall to the ground and Michaela coming towards you, where did your group of friends go?
Well, after the gold car moved, we went to Michaela, and then I looked back, and then all of that.
Okay. And so the gold SUV moved, you said?
Yes.
And did it go straight?
Yes.
Okay.
From what I could see.
It didn't back up or anything like that?
No.
And then you thought you saw it come back around the Fountain Gate Apartments?
Yeah.
Because there's streets around that Fountain Gates, and looking at the map. Yes, okay. We have to say yes or no
Yes,
to the
ma'am.
court reporter, okay? Miss Hash
Okay.
is taking it down. But like I said, you're doing great. So, did you ever run to Hope's house to try to unlock the door?
We were in the back. I had them go in the backyard, and they couldn't open the back door. So yeah, I ran down the alley and then turned, and then went back to the front of Kingston, and I rang her mom's doorbell a lot until she opened the door.
Okay. And then when you said you had them go to the back door.
Yes.
Why did you have them go to the back door?
Because we were right behind their house, and they could get in their backyard from there. and it was just the easiest route at the point in time.
Were you scared?
Yes.
And so you said after you tried the back door, and then you see Michaela or go to Michaela?
So there we just heard from 3 middle school students, presumably classmates or at least students who went to the same school as Lauren Lynn DeVazzo and Michaela Smith, and who were also walking home that September 2014 day when Kody Lott pulled up and started shooting, killing Lauren and injuring Michaela Smith. So, Brian, you know, we talked about this briefly before the testimony began, but certainly it's very impactful to hear young people speak about horrifying experiences like this.
Absolutely. And as the prosecutor is doing a great job being very personable, helping them march along the information. As a defense attorney, I would hesitate to cross-examine them because I'm not sure if I want to hear. I'm not sure if I want the jury to hear that story twice.
Right. And also, I mean, is there a perception of, like a negative perception of cross-examining young people, children who were just witnesses? They were no way connected to any crime.
Well, and sometimes you have to. I think in this case you don't. What I was taught when I was teaching other young attorneys is be mindful of what and who you are. Me, for example, I'm not going to go and cross-examine a 13-year-old very harshly because I know that I'm a very tall, large man, and that optics looks horrible.
Right.
For this kind of case, I don't think the defense attorney should cross-examine on what they observed unless they can bring information to show that maybe Mr. Lott was erratic or looked crazy at the time this occurred.
Right. Well, that's a good point for sure, because they do want to argue insanity and that, you know, bring up the point that he told investigators the devil told him to do it. As we know, he was actually found incompetent to stand trial months before this trial began, but after treatment was later found fit to stand trial. We'll see how that all plays out as this continues. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Michaela Smith takes the stand, talks about being shot as her friend lay bleeding on the ground next to her. Stick around. Welcome back to Law and Crime's Rewind. We are revisiting the case of Texas versus Kody Lott, and we are about to hear from the surviving victim in this case. Michaela Smith, 13 years old, was shot by Kody Lott. She remembers the feeling of blood rushing out of her body. She was walking home from school with her 13-year-old friend, Lauren Lynn DeVazzo, who was shot and killed. Now, Michaela Smith did not want her face to be shown on this live stream during the trial, and so you will just hear her voice, but her story is quite compelling. Let's take a listen.
You said he. So the driver of that vehicle was a male?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know, was he old, young? How would you describe him, the age?
I'd say he was between like 20s or like 17, 18.
Okay. Do you remember what he looked like?
Yes, ma'am.
What did he look like?
He had brown hair, and it was like shaggy, kind of.
Okay.
Shaggy things. And he had acne, and he had a big nose.
And do you remember what race he was?
He was Caucasian.
Okay. And when the vehicle stopped, was the window up or down? Do you remember?
It was down.
It was down. Do you remember if the vehicle had tinted windows or not?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
They were tinted.
They were tinted. So they were in that dark black tint?
Yes.
And can you describe the vehicle that you remember?
It was a black truck.
Okay.
And it had those silver bars that you would step on to get in.
Okay.
And I don't know what type, but it had its brand on the side.
Okay. And then when the window was down and you saw this brown-haired, shaggy Caucasian male, did you see anything else that unusual from the vehicle?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And did you ever see any type of firearm or weapon?
No, ma'am, not at that time.
Did you ever see a weapon in the vehicle?
Not when it pulled up, no.
And so once it pulled up, you saw the person and it stopped. What is the next thing you remember?
I remember he stopped and we all kind of just like stopped walking.
Mm-hmm.
And I was paying attention to him and I was looking at him and like he looked up at me and we made eye contact for a few seconds and then he turned and like he got his weapon and he pointed it at me. So like I was kind of turned this way to move.
Okay, to your right?
To my right.
Okay.
And I was kind of, well, I was trying to reach for Kyra so she can move because I didn't know what was going on. And like he pointed it at me and as I was moving I got hit and like I thought I got hit in the middle of my chest.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't breathe. And Kyra was asking me if I was okay and like I couldn't speak and I was waving at her to go and kind of like motioning for everybody else to move. And we all turned to leave and I was hearing shots firing over and over. And I was wondering why like we weren't getting hit anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And like I thought everyone was there. And like after everything, all this like no, there were no more shots and like we stopped running. And we all turned and like the car was gone. And I was kind of making head counts and like I didn't see Lauren anywhere. So I was walking over to the dumpster and I had to sit down because I couldn't keep standing. And as I was...
Michaela Smith on the stand recounting her experience. She was shot and her friend was shot to death. Again, we're not seeing her because she asked her face not be shown for broadcast. So you were just seeing the back of Kody Lott's head when we hear her emotional testimony. It does continue. Let's listen.
Near the dumpsters, Kyra, I still didn't know if it was real or not. And like I was feeling my blood run down my chest, down my stomach, and Kyra was asking if it was a joke, like she wanted it to be, because she was freaking out, and one of the 7th or 6th graders came up to me, and she was like, "No, that's blood, that's real," and that's when I was really starting to look from my friend, and like I turned, and all I saw was her legs, and she was laying on the floor. And I was screaming her name, and she wasn't responding. So that's when I got out my phone to call my mom, because I wanted to tell her my friend was hurt. So I was calling her, and it wasn't going through. And then her call kind of like overrided mine, so I answered, and I was telling her that Lauren got shot, and she couldn't hear me, and I told her about 2 more times, and she still didn't hear me, and then I said I got shot, and she heard me, and like I was hearing her run, and she was telling me not to move, and I was kind of I was scared because like my friend, I wanted her to get here quick, and like I was walking, I didn't want to go over to her because I thought I would make it worse than she already was. So I kept my distance, and that's when a man jumped over the fence, and he came over to me, and he was telling me to sit down, and 2 nurses came up and
She was tan and she had black hair, and she took the phone from me to talk to my mom, and she went over it, kind of covered it in the middle.
Did you think you were going to die that day?
I wasn't really worried about my state because I was still walking and like breathing. I was more worried about Lauren because she wasn't responding.
Kayla, do you know Kody Lott?
No, ma'am.
Did Lauren ever mention Kody Lott's name?
No, ma'am.
Did any of your friends mention Kody Lott's name?
No, ma'am.
So no one knew him at that time? Do you ever think about that day?
Yes, ma'am.
How often do you think about that day?
No. Sometimes it'll come up when I'm laying on my stomach or I'm doing normal activity, because since the bullet is so close to where my bra wire is, like it'll scrape it or whatever, it'll hurt. I have to adjust it, or I have to adjust how I'm laying down. And then memories kind of come up. Or I'll think about it like near the anniversary or on her birthday or my birthday.
You two are close friends?
Yes, ma'am.
And I know this is going to sound like a silly question, but it's one I have to ask you. Did you feel pain when you were shot that day with that bullet?
Yes, ma'am.
What's the last thing you remember when you seen Lauren that day?
The last thing I remember, it was just her feet sticking out over the blanket.
And she wore Converse just like you too, didn't she?
Some emotional testimony from the surviving victim in this shooting. Michaela Smith testifying about feeling herself being shot, not even being sure whether it was real, calling her mother, people rushing to help her, her shirt being bloodied, and also important to note that she still has a bullet in her chest that doctors were not able to remove, that will have to stay in there for now. So, Brian, you know, we've been talking about this the duration that we've been reviewing this Kody Lott trial, but earlier we heard middle schoolers who saw what happened. Now we have a girl who was right there, who was shot herself and saw her good friend falling down and was calling to her friend, was more concerned about her friend than herself. And also, you know, talks about how no one knew Kody Lott, this random guy, pulled up. So certainly compelling testimony for jurors.
Absolutely. I think I might have said this in the past. Defense attorneys might go back and forth. Which one's harder, a murder case or an attempted murder? And the reason why they say that is because in a murder case, there's going to be no victim who's going to stand up there and say, this person killed me. In an attempted murder, obviously someone can get up there and take the stand, but there's not the gravitas of someone lost their life. In this case, unfortunately, you have the worst of both worlds for a defense attorney, where someone did lose their life, and you have someone who's literally right next to the victim who can give you play-by-play, step-by-step as to the gruesome incident. And the fact that their age and they're young girls and they're middle school, walking home from school and so innocent, only makes it that much worse.
Although, as we know from the last trial, we just rewound on our Law and Crime Rewind, even if you have a surviving victim who's there, it doesn't necessarily cement the case, because in that case she wasn't so sure about the guys' identities, and there were another number of other factors with the weapons. Here, I don't think there is as much uncertainty in this case because do it. He also apparently told police that he was angry about not having a girlfriend. When you have an admission like that, even though his team is going to argue insanity, I mean, that really makes a difference. For example, in the other case when the defendants were denying involvement.
Correct. Denying or taking culpability for a crime, generally speaking, should not be the is-all and end-all as to whether or not the person committed the crime, because there are people who do false confessions for a number of reasons. There are people who did the crime but say they didn't do it. So it hits the spectrum. But I think in this case, the evidence, including the confession as well as the witnesses of the children that testified as well, that points strongly to one individual.
We are going to hear some of Kody Lott's admission in his interrogation. It was recorded, and that video is going to be played coming up. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We are rewinding to Texas versus Kody Lott. Kody Lott actually confessed to shooting and killing 13-year-old Lauren Landavazo and shooting and injuring her friend Michaela Smith, but he says he did it because the devil told him so. Let's now go ahead and listen to that interrogation when he admitted that to police.
And you code AR-15, and you use offensive defense on it.
I mean, it's just like I told him, like, I put some thought into the size of the bullet that I wanted to fire with. So
explain that to me. Now that's curious.
Because I had access to a 223 AR.
Some folks just throw something in there and just get. I mean, you know, when we had the lot of gang violence during the 1990s, we collect 9.
Oh yeah, but that's a lot different though. That's survival, man. This was like an assassination. This was like, I told him I was outraged when Daryl Franklin brought up, and I said I was happy about everything he told Daryl Franklin. He said, this senseless act of violence. I said, how was it senseless? There was nothing but sense put into it. I said, that was just a sophisticated assassination. There ain't no just senseless, just all out of the blue act of, let's just create an act of violence to be violent.
So I'm curious about what people are saying about me, too.
Well, I was curious, but I'm not curious. I knew, because I was all like Facebook and Presidents and news. I was constantly going to the KFDX News Channel 3 homepage and watching the videos of rolling out there. I've been paranoid. And the funny thing about, I hate to say it, like I don't. I'm sorry. The funniest thing to me was when, the funny thing to me is when they said, we have the second shot right now. I said, this is working in my favor. I mean, somebody else is going to put the target on their back now. You know, I said, there's people, these two girls have died. Some idiot you don't even know is shooting a bird or shooting something.
Well, that's just it. We got the bird season started, you know?
It was just so funny to watch them on that video. The funniest thing was seeing those officers rushing. People like running like that. It was just funny because it would be not funny if there really was fire, I think.
Right.
But you seeing them like have no clue was just funny to me. You know, because they're not the detectives.
Man, you know, shots ring out, or take cover.
You're fine.
You better take cover. And that's just, I know we're trying to do that. You better take cover when shots ring out.
Well, that's what I mean. It wouldn't be funny if they were just took cover. These they were running, like they were just running, shaking. I mean, you have to watch the video, you know.
I don't have to watch it now. I don't know if
I was already watching. I thought he was like, I don't know. I thought the way I was watching it, like I told Ben, man, it was all fun and games until they came on there yesterday and said a new description of the vehicle, and I said, I'm sorry.
Yes, he's all over the truck.
Yeah, I've been on social media.
That was Kody Lott shortly after the shooting. He is being interrogated by police. And Brian, I mean, let me first ask you, what do we make of his demeanor? He's kind of jumping around. He's not making much sense. He's laughing. He's saying this wasn't a senseless killing. It was a sophisticated assassination. Obviously, both sides are going to try to spin this tape differently.
Absolutely. It's how you interpret the information in front of you. I think it goes always to his mental capacity. So for the prosecutor saying it's thought out, it's intentional, he knows what he's doing, he understands the repercussions of his actions, that's murder. That's the death penalty, that's what we're aiming for. As a defense attorney, you're looking at the irrational reactions, the moving, the jarring, the laughing, like that's not a regular person. I would cross-examine the officer. Did you know if he was on drugs at the time? If he was using any medication? Did he smell like alcohol? And if you can eliminate those, then you're just driving home that insanity idea.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly questionable behavior. Well, we're at that time already where we have to play the verdict, so let's go ahead and do it. How do jurors find Kody Lott?
Be seated, please. Ms. Garrett, has your jury reached its verdict?
It has.
Let me read this to you and ask you if it's the verdict of the jury. Count one, we, the jury, find the defendant Kody Lott guilty of the offense of murder as alleged in the indictment. Is that
Yes,
correct?
sir.
Deadly weapon verdict, count one. Having found the defendant guilty of murder as charged in the indictment, we, the jury, further find that a deadly weapon, namely a firearm, was used or exhibited during the commission of the offense. Is that the verdict of your jury?
Yes, sir.
Verdict of the jury, count two. We, the jury, find the defendant Kody Lott guilty of the offense of aggravated assault as alleged to the indictment. Is that the verdict of your jury?
Yes, sir.
And then finally, verdict of the jury, deadly weapon verdict, count two. Having found the defendant guilty of aggravated assault as charged in the indictment, we, the jury, further find that a deadly weapon, namely a firearm, was used or exhibited during the commission of a felony offense. Is that also the verdict of your jury?
Yes, sir.
Is this a unanimous verdict on each of the four?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. You may be seated. Does the state care to have the jury poll?
State does not, no.
No. Ladies and gentlemen, the jury, that completes the first phase of the proceedings. I will recess you until 9 o'clock in the morning, when we will begin the punishment phase. While you're on break tonight, again, I admonish you not to discuss the case. Don't formally express any punishment opinions in the case, and avoid the media reports of the case. Once again, if you'll try to be outside, back at the courthouse at 8:45 tonight, we'll start back at 9 o'clock. Counsel will be in recess until 8:30. The jury is excused with Mr. Costa. Please remain in the courtroom until the jury is over.
Thank you.
Well, there you heard it. The jury finding Kody Lott guilty of murdering Lauren Landavazo and guilty of the aggravated assault of her friend Michaela Smith, who was 13 at the time and who is now 15. This was a quick deliberation. According to some reports, just 18 minutes long. So clearly, the prosecutors did their job here if jurors had nothing to discuss regarding the death. Just quickly to run down the other details, Lott was sentenced to serve life in prison and 20 years for the aggravated assault. In addition, he was sentenced to pay a total fine of $20,000, and the family of Lauren Landavazo is pursuing civil charges against him as well. Brian, is this any surprise to you, and what can we make of the fact that they deliberated for less than 30 minutes?
Not a surprise at all. I think what you get from that is that the jury walked into the room, someone probably looked around and said, guilty? And everyone's like, yeah. And they might have been one holdout or a person who wanted to talk it out a little, but typically juries take a little bit longer because they send notes back to the attorneys asking, can we get a readback of this, can we get a readback of that? And that in itself takes about 10-15 minutes.
I mean, unfortunately, because of our tight timeline today and we have so much to get in on our rewind, we did not play, the defense's expert testimony who testified to Kody Lott's mindset. But clearly, whatever that testimony did not stick, because although he clearly does not seem with it in that interrogation video, he confesses to the crime. He says it was a sophisticated assassination. I wonder if you call something, sophisticated assassination, that doesn't necessarily prove intent or premeditation, but, a sophisticated assassination is something that would be planned, theoretically.
Correct. And if you actually look at the standards by which both prosecutor and defense have to go through, you can really see how much the jury believed the prosecutor, because the prosecution actually has to prove all the elements, intent being one of them, beyond a reasonable doubt. It's a pretty high burden. It's the highest one they have in the country. The defense attorney in Texas only has to prove insanity by preponderance of the evidence, what most lawyers say about 51%. So the jury didn't even believe by about 51% he was insane. They fully believed he knew what he was doing and that he was culpable for all the acts.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your analysis on this trial and our earlier trial, Brian. Before we sign off for the afternoon, we want to recap some of our best caught-on-cam moments of 2018. Take a look.
I'm Anthony Velez for Law&Crime, and here are your top 5 caught on court camera moments of 2018. Number 5.
God! God! God!
A suspect in a double murder was denied bond in a Florida courtroom after screaming from a wheelchair during his bond hearing. 19-year-old Damon Kemp is accused of the fatal shooting of 19-year-old Trey Ingraham and 19-year-old Jordan Payton at their home in Daytona Beach. Kemp, who was reportedly staying with the two victims at their home, is seen being disruptive during his bond hearing.
God! God! God!
I've reviewed your arrest warrant to determine whether there's probable cause for your arrest.
That?
Kemp now faces 2 counts of second-degree murder. Number 4. A crazy melee unfolded in a Florida courtroom after a guilty verdict was read in a murder trial. Video shows the eruption of violence after the verdict was delivered in a murder trial with 4 defendants. 3 of the co-defendants can be seen brawling with their own defense attorneys and court bailiffs. Once order was restored to the court, all 4 defendants were sentenced to life in prison. The 4 men were convicted in the shooting death of 28-year-old Kody Lott in 2016. Number 3. A man in Oregon was caught on camera trying to grab an officer's service weapon during his trial in a Lincoln County courtroom. 27-year-old Scott Patrick Lemon can be seen quickly standing up and unsuccessfully lunging for the gun of a Newport police officer before being tackled to the ground by another officer. Lemon was convicted for robbing 2 guests at a beachfront condo in Newport with a fake gun. Number 2. A judge in Washington state played the role of court officer and chased down 2 handcuffed inmates who made a run for sweet freedom in his courtroom. The inmates, 22-year-old Tanner Jacobson and 28-year-old Cody Howard, saw an opportunity to escape and went for it. That's when Judge R.W. Buzzard surprised everyone and leapt into action, chasing down the fleeing inmates. Buzzard was able to apprehend Howard before he exited the building. Jacobson was caught by officers a few blocks away. Here's the number 1 caught on court camera moment.
We, the jury, find the defendant Daniel Villegas not guilty of...
Daniel Villegas was found not guilty of murder, ending a 25-year saga that included 3 trials and appeals. Villegas faced capital murder charges for the 1993 fatal shooting of 2 teens in El Paso and served 18 years in prison prior to his acquittal. Villegas, who was 16 at the time of the killings, faced his first trial in 1994, which ended in a mistrial, but was convicted during a second trial a year later, receiving a life sentence. The bittersweet moment of his acquittal was caught on court camera.
We, the jury, find the defendant Daniel Villegas not guilty of...
That was the number 1 caught on court camera moment. I'm Anthony Velez for Law and Crime.
Well, certainly some good moments. Thank you, Anthony, for that. Well, that is going to do it for us this afternoon. Thank you, Brian Buckmire, as always, for your great insights and for being with us this afternoon. I'm Stacey Delicat, but stick around because Jesse Weber is coming up next, and our Law and Crime Rewind continues. He is going to be walking you back through the Sean Great case. Remember, this was a particularly horrific case. Sean Great alleged to have held a woman hostage, sexually abused her, assaulted her for days. When police finally showed up, they found 2 other dead bodies. Stay with us. That is coming up next. Thanks again for watching. Have a great weekend. We'll be right back with Jesse Weber right after this break.